Wow, the details of this Rangers trade with the Vancouver Canucks are absolutely insane. We're going to break down what Chris Drury has in store and how some of these moves could have major implications on the Rangers lineup moving forward. We're going to break it all down in this episode of Rangers Digest. But before we do, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 74% of you who watch these videos are not actually subscribed to the channel. So if you want to stay up to date with everything New York Rangers, it's free. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. Now, Elliotte Friedman dropped a very interesting report yesterday, very late last night, detailing the framework and details around a Mika Zibanejad for J.T. Miller trade. And he dropped this late last night, the written 32 thoughts. And a lot of it has to do with J.T. Miller and what's happening with Elias Pettersson in Vancouver and the fact that it's coming to a head. And it looks like the Canucks will move off of at least one of those players. And this is from The Athletic's Josh. Vancouver turned down a Miller for Mika Zibanejad deal, and I believe he's correct. A few weeks ago, New York denied it, and all it takes is for someone like, Yo to shake it out, and information follows. You'll remember that when Miller took his mental health break, the Rangers, who covet the player, were in Vancouver to play the Vancouver Canucks. From what I understand, they approached the Canucks to discuss what could something look like, and Zibanejad was included in the conversation. Now, this is where it gets interesting because, first of all, 1-for-1, J.T. Miller for Mika Zibanejad. I think most Rangers fans absolutely do that at this point. I think that's a no-brainer, and I think the reason it's a no-brainer is the reason that it was turned down by the Canucks. Makes sense, right? But this is the most interesting part to me of this whole paragraph, if you will, is that Zibanejad was included in the conversation, but I don't know that Zibanejad, who has a no-move clause, was ever approached about it. Now, I think this is the right way to approach it. If you're Chris Drury, I think you have to go out and look for trades, potential trade partners. If they're okay with it, then you approach the player. If you approach Mika Zibanejad about waiving his no-trade clause and then nothing happens and it falls through, that could really affect the player's morale and his mindset for the rest of the season. So I think that's a correct way of doing it, but the fact that he was never asked and it never got that far, I think is very interesting. I asked at the time, it did not receive a clear answer. I also think it was actually a bigger deal, and one of the issues is that Vancouver adores Braden Schneider, who the Rangers do not want to trade. This would be the second time New York has rejected a Vancouver attempt for him. Now, Braden Schneider, I think, is not on the table. In no world is this player going to be traded. I mean, that would be ludicrous if you trade Braden Schneider at this point in his career, where he is in his development and how good he's been for the New York Rangers. So I thought that was very interesting. And in terms of a small other update from Elliotte Friedman, the most coveted Ranger is undoubtedly Vincent Trocheck, but they aren't interested in trading him. And listening to his comments lately, and I can totally agree with this, you can see them making him the captain. I think it's just a matter of time before we see Vincent Trocheck as the next captain of the New York Rangers. Now, and it could have come as early as this season. I believe they really, really like that player. In his comments lately, I mean, he is the captain. You can see it in the way that he's talking. Now, earlier this season, the Rangers offered a struggling center, Mika Zibanejad, to Vancouver in return for J.T. Miller. The Canucks turned down the offer. It's no secret that the New York Rangers are very interested in Miller, who was drafted by New York in 2011 and played his first 6 NHL seasons there. And then, obviously, we know the rest, was traded for basically nothing. And now the Rangers want him back, and they're going to have to pay a king's ransom. That's New York Rangers hockey for you. But, I think it's interesting. They really want him. And I heard another report that Chris Drury would do almost anything at this point to acquire J.T. Miller. He really wants that player. And it sounds like the Vancouver Canucks, I don't know if they're leaning one way or another, but I think they're leaning towards trading J.T. Miller. That's just the sense I'm getting. So it looks like he could be on the block. This is from Mark Freitas of the Mug NHL. Canucks reject trade offer for J.T. Miller. And does it make sense? Miller was drafted by the Rangers, obviously. And since 2019, Miller has been with the Vancouver Canucks. Obviously spent some time with the Tampa Bay Lightning as well. Now, this season, including a leave of absence, J.T. Miller has scored 29 points in 29 games. Last year, he had a great year as well. Like, this is a point-a-game player. This is over a point-a-game player, I think, when he's on his game. So this is a highly coveted player. He's only 31 years old as well. His cap hit, I mean, it's pretty interesting. He's in year 2 of an $8 million cap hit. So I think that's pretty reasonable for the Rangers. I mean, they can definitely take that on. He's going to be a little bit older when the contract's up, but if what Chris Drury is doing recently this season is any indication, they will get rid of the contract when they want to. So for Mika Zibanejad, this season has not been kind to him as he struggled. 39 games this season, Zibanejad only has 8 goals, 16 assists, 24 points in 39 games. And Zibanejad has a contract signed through 2030 with a no movement clause and $8.5 million cap hit. Now, I don't know about you, but I'd rather trade a player who's well under a point a game for a player. I know there's a difference because they're centers, but Mika Zibanejad is not even playing great at center defensively this year. So I think I would rather take a point a game or over a point a game player over Zibanejad for less money cap hit wise. And Elliot Friedman on JT Miller. There's at least a handful of teams who say, we're following, but we don't want anything to do with either player because we're not sure we want to inject either one of their personalities into our team at this time. Now, I think it's interesting. Everything we've heard about JT Miller, I wonder if you want to inject a little bit of that into this Rangers locker room. So I am curious about that. But on the other side of things, I think teams are being very cautious because they don't know exactly who's the one causing the problems in the locker room and who's I think we have an idea because of some interviews that were done, but I think a lot of teams are very hesitant. I also heard a report, and I believe it's from Elliot Friedman as well. It might have been Nick Kiprios of Sportsnet, forgive me, but JT Miller will only waive his no movement clause. This is a rumor. Will only waive his no movement clause to go to the New York Rangers. So there's a lot of teams kicking around, but it seems like he only wants to go to the New York Rangers. So there's a bunch of teams going. We don't know who's right, who's wrong. We have no ability to decipher that. This isn't anything we want to sink our teeth into to get a maybe this works for us, maybe it doesn't. So I think that's kind of where the Rangers are on this as well. We can take a look at their stats again. I mean, if you look at Mika Zibanejad so far this season, yes, he's playing a lot of ice time. Some of it's been puzzling. I don't know why he sees the ice sometimes in games that he's not producing. He only has 25 points, again, at the time of the recording. 25 points on the season. And in the article, it said he had 24 points, but he picked up a point since that article was written. And then, obviously, he has played 40 games on the season. So the article is a little bit out of date, what I just mentioned there. But in terms of JT Miller this season, again, 29 points, 29 games. He did have that leave of absence. I think that, scares off a few teams maybe. Maybe not the Rangers. I think Chris Drury, whether you like it or not, it sounds like he wants this player. Plays a lot of ice time. He's a power play specialist as well. This is another guy who can really get the power play going, which, hasn't been too great this season. But again, they're roughly the same age as well. So, I mean, you're not really... you're saving a little bit of money if you go out and get JT Miller, and obviously they're about the same age and their contracts run roughly the same length. So JT Miller's might be a little bit longer, but I think it's a very interesting trade proposition. Obviously there would have to be more included. I think the Canucks just want way too much in a trade that includes Mika Zibanejad, like Braden Schneider, for JT Miller. And I think JT Miller, if traded, because of the player he is, the points he puts up, he's going to garner a lot of interest. He's going to, the Canucks are going to want a lot of assets. It's going to be very interesting. But let me know what you think of this, I guess, failed trade between the Canucks and the Rangers. And it seems like they could still be building off of something, off of that framework that could get done in the near future. But let me know what you think in the comments. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything New York Rangers.